Somebody told me you were in the building, and I didn't know you were going to swing in here. It was very nice of you.
Well, I was doing that.
John Ford and John Wayne created some of the most iconic films in Hollywood history, shaping how entire generations saw Western heroes on screen. But behind the camera, their relationship was far more complicated than most people realize. At the center of it all was one issue that Ford could never seem to ignore, and Wayne could never fully escape. It influenced their work, their conversations, and even the way they saw each other as people over time. Join us as we uncover how one decision changed everything between two Hollywood legends. John Wayne before stardom. John Wayne was born as Marion Robert Morrison in 1907 in Winterset, Iowa. His early life did not hint at Hollywood fame. His family later moved to Glendale, California, where he grew up in a modest household. As a young boy, he was active, athletic, and did well in school. He developed a strong interest in sports, especially football, which later became an important part of his early identity. After finishing high school, Morrison earned a sports scholarship to the University of Southern California. He played football there and showed real promise as an athlete. However, his time in sports did not last. A serious injury ended his football career and forced him to leave the team. This moment changed the direction of his life. Without sports to rely on, he had to look for a new path, even though he had no clear plan for what came next. While trying to stay connected to the university environment, he began taking small jobs around the film industry. He worked behind the scenes in Hollywood, including doing simple tasks on movie sets and assisting with props. These early jobs were not glamorous. He was not acting in major roles at first. Instead, he slowly learned how the film industry worked from the ground up. During this period, a film director named Raoul Walsh noticed him and gave him a chance in acting. It was Walsh who suggested the stage name John Wayne. The name sounded stronger and more memorable than Marion Morrison, and it helped create a new identity for him in Hollywood. At first, Wayne appeared in small and mostly unnoticed roles in silent and early sound films. He was still trying to find his place in the industry, and success did not come quickly. For nearly a decade, he worked in low-budget westerns and minor productions. These films did not make him a star, but they gave him experience and screen presence. He learned how to carry himself on camera and how to fit into the western genre, which would later define his career. Even though progress was slow, he stayed active and continued working steadily in films throughout the 1930s. Everything changed in 1939 when director John Ford cast him in the film Stagecoach. This was a major turning point. Ford saw something in Wayne that others had overlooked. In Stagecoach, Wayne played the role of the Ringo Kid, a character that gave him a chance to stand out in a serious, high-quality production. The film became a huge success and brought him wide attention for the first time. After Stagecoach, John Wayne's career rose quickly. He began to appear in more major films and became closely associated with westerns. His on-screen presence was calm, direct, and strong, which made him very popular with audiences. Over time, Hollywood began to shape him into a symbol of rugged masculinity and American patriotism. He was no longer just an actor trying to make it. He had become one of the most recognizable faces in the film industry. By the early 1940s, John Wayne had fully transformed from Marion Morrison into a major Hollywood figure. His rise was not instant, but it was steady, built on years of small roles, persistence, and the breakthrough moment that Stagecoach provided. And just as his star began to rise, tensions and choices from the outside world started to shape how people truly saw him behind the screen. Bear with me for just a moment. This is genuinely worth 20 seconds of your time. Quick question. Can you still remember every word to a song from 1975, but you forgot what you had for breakfast this morning? Scientists found the exact reason for that pattern in 2013. It has nothing to do with aging. It's a specific system inside your brain, and researchers have found exactly how to restore it. Go to brainresearchreport.com, or if it's easier, it's linked in the description below. It's genuinely one of those things you'll wish you'd known sooner. Now, back to the video. A legend under Ford. John Ford was already one of the most powerful directors in Hollywood when John Wayne started to rise. Ford was known for Western films and had a strong influence on how the genre looked and felt. He had a long career by the time he met Wayne, and he was respected for his ability to create serious, emotional stories set in the American frontier. Ford had a clear style, and many of his films focused on duty, sacrifice, and leadership under pressure. Ford first noticed John Wayne's screen presence even before he made him a star. He saw something in Wayne that many others in Hollywood had missed. At the time, Wayne was still acting in smaller films and had not yet become a major name. Ford believed Wayne had the right physical look and calm behavior needed for Western roles. He felt Wayne could represent strong and steady characters on screen if guided properly. Their major collaboration began with Stagecoach in 1939. This film is often seen as the turning point in Wayne's career. Ford gave him the leading role of the Ringo Kid, which allowed Wayne to show a more serious and controlled performance. The film was a success and immediately raised Wayne's status in Hollywood. After that, Ford continued to work with him in several other films, including The Long Voyage Home and Fort Apache. These films helped shape Wayne into a regular leading man under Ford's direction. What made their partnership important was how Ford built Wayne's screen identity over time. Ford guided him to play characters that were calm, strong, and emotionally controlled. These roles did not show many open emotions. Instead, they focused on discipline, responsibility, and quiet strength. This helped create the public image of John Wayne as a tough and reliable figure, which became central to his fame. Ford's directing style was known to be very strict. He did not always explain himself clearly to actors and often pushed them hard during filming. He could be demanding and sometimes harsh on set. Many actors found working with him difficult because he expected complete obedience and discipline. He also used psychological pressure to get the performances he wanted. This meant actors often had to adjust not just their acting, but their entire approach to working with him. Despite this tough environment, Wayne continued to work closely with Ford. Over time, a complex relationship formed between them. Ford respected Wayne's ability to follow direction and maintain a strong screen presence. At the same time, Ford often pushed him beyond his comfort zone and criticized him when he felt Wayne was not performing at the level he expected. This created a mix of admiration and pressure between them. Wayne, on the other hand, looked up to Ford as a major influence in his career. Ford gave him opportunities that no one else had offered at that stage. However, the control Ford had over him also created tension. Wayne was becoming a star, but much of his early image was shaped under Ford's strict direction and personal standards. This early bond between them was strong, but it was also complicated, built on both respect and control that would later lead to deeper disagreements. The draft controversy. During World War II, the United States used a system called selective service to decide who would be drafted into the military. Men within certain age ranges were required to register, and local draft boards decided who would serve and who would be excused. Many different factors were considered, including health, family responsibilities, and essential work. Not everyone who registered was sent to fight, but most able-bodied men were expected to serve if called. John Wayne did register for the draft, but he was classified as 3A, which meant he received a dependency deferment. This classification was given to men who were considered essential to support their families. In Wayne's case, this was connected to his personal situation at the time, including financial responsibilities and family obligations. Because of this status, he was not called into active military service during the war years. Another major factor was the film industry itself. Hollywood studios had strong influence over major stars, and they worked hard to protect actors who were important to their financial success. Wayne was not yet the biggest star in the early 1940s, but he was becoming valuable to studios like Republic Pictures and later Warner Brothers. These companies had a clear interest in keeping him active in films rather than losing him to military service. While they did not directly control draft decisions, their influence and legal support helped protect key actors from being drafted. Even though Wayne did not serve, he often presented himself as strongly patriotic in public. He supported the American war effort through speeches, appearances, and public statements. At the same time, he continued working in Hollywood while many real soldiers were fighting overseas. This created a clear difference between his public image and his actual military involvement. He was seen as a supporter of the war, but not as someone who personally joined the fighting. To strengthen his patriotic image, Wayne later took on military roles in films. One of the most well-known examples is Sands of Iwo Jima in 1949, where he played a tough Marine leader. The The film was widely praised and helped reinforce his image as a strong and patriotic American figure. Over time, he continued to appear in roles that showed military strength and national pride. These performances helped balance public criticism and shaped how audiences viewed him. However, not everyone in Hollywood accepted this image without question. During and after the war, there were quiet discussions within the industry about why Wayne had not served. Some people respected his career choices, while others felt uncomfortable with the gap between his on-screen patriotism and his real-life draft status. These early whispers about draft dodging did not become a major public scandal at the time, but they did circulate among insiders who knew the details of his deferment and studio protection. As his fame grew, these questions did not fully disappear. Instead, they remained part of the background of his career, especially as his films became more focused on military and patriotic themes. And behind all of this, one powerful figure who had actually served in the war was quietly forming a very different opinion of him: Ford's military service. John Ford was not only a film director during World War II, but also someone who actively served in the U.S. military. He joined the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, which was a wartime intelligence group, and also worked with naval intelligence. His role was not symbolic or limited to supporting war efforts from a distance. He was directly involved in documenting real military operations and collecting information during the conflict. Ford was sent to the Pacific during the war, where he filmed real combat situations for the U.S. Navy. One of his most well-known works from this time is the documentary The Battle of Midway. While filming, Ford was present during dangerous conditions and witnessed the reality of war up close. He saw injured soldiers, destroyed ships, and the emotional strain faced by those on the front lines. These experiences had a strong impact on him and changed how he viewed war and those who participated in it. Because of what he saw, Ford developed a very different understanding of patriotism compared to many people in Hollywood. For him, patriotism was not about appearances or film roles. It was about actual service, sacrifice, and exposure to danger. He came to see a clear difference between those who served in the military and those who only supported the war through films or public statements. This is where his idea of studio patriots began to form. Ford used this idea to describe actors and public figures who showed strong support for the war in movies or interviews but did not serve in the military themselves. He did not respect this gap between image and action. In his view, real soldiers had lived through hardship and risk, while studio figures were only acting out versions of those experiences on screen. As the war ended and Hollywood returned to normal production, Ford's feelings on this subject did not fade. In fact, they became stronger. He began to feel growing frustration toward actors who had avoided military service during the war years. Even though he continued to work in Hollywood, his wartime experiences stayed with him and influenced how he saw the industry. John Wayne became one of the most visible examples of this issue for Ford. Wayne had become a major star in westerns and war films, often playing strong military or patriotic characters. However, Ford knew that Wayne had not served in the war. This created a conflict in Ford's mind because the image Wayne portrayed on screen did not match his real-life military record. Over time, Wayne became an uncomfortable symbol for Ford. He represented the gap between Hollywood storytelling and real wartime experience. Even though Ford continued to work with Wayne on films, his personal feelings toward him became more complicated. Respect for Wayne's acting ability existed, but it was mixed with disappointment and frustration about his lack of service during the war. This tension did not always show openly during filming, but it influenced how Ford interacted with Wayne behind the scenes. The difference between Ford's lived experience in combat and Wayne's protected Hollywood career created a distance that would continue to grow in the years that followed. And as this personal divide deepened, their professional relationship began to show the first real signs of strain. The first fallout. Tensions between John Ford and John Wayne began to grow slowly during the final years of World War II and became more noticeable afterward. Before the war, their relationship was mostly professional and productive, built on successful films and mutual benefit. But once Ford returned from military service, his outlook had changed, and so did the way he viewed people in Hollywood who had not served. Ford had seen real combat conditions and had worked closely with soldiers. Because of this, he became more direct in his opinions about those who stayed behind in the film industry. His criticism of John Wayne's draft deferment became sharper over time. He did not hide his belief that Wayne, despite his growing fame, had avoided the same level of sacrifice that many others had faced. This created an emotional distance between the two men that began to show during their later work together. When they continued collaborating on films after the war, small moments of friction started to appear on set. Ford was known for being strict and unpredictable as a director, but with Wayne, his tone often became more personal. He would challenge Wayne in ways that felt less like directing and more like questioning his character. This created discomfort during filming, even though both men still needed each other professionally. There are several reported anecdotes from cast and crew members that suggest Ford sometimes embarrassed Wayne in front of others. On certain occasions, Ford would make sharp remarks about Wayne's background or his lack of military service. These comments were not always part of formal discussions, but were made during filming or on set in front of other actors and crew. While not every detail is confirmed, many people who worked with him noticed that Ford's attitude toward Wayne had become more critical and less respectful compared to their earlier years. Wayne did not respond openly to most of these situations, but he was affected by them. He became more defensive about his public image, especially regarding masculinity and patriotism. Since he was often criticized, even indirectly, for not serving in the war, he worked harder to build strong, tough characters on screen. He chose roles that showed military leadership, emotional control, and physical strength. This helped him reinforce the image that the public already associated with him. At the same time, Wayne avoided direct confrontation with Ford. Instead of arguing or breaking off their working relationship, he continued to collaborate with him. However, the emotional gap between them continued to grow. Ford's comments and behavior suggested disappointment, while Wayne's actions suggested a need to prove himself through his work rather than through personal explanation. Despite the tension, they still made films together, which meant their relationship remained professional on the surface. To the public and the film industry, they were still a successful director-actor team. But behind the scenes, the trust and ease they once had were no longer the same. Their conversations became more careful, and their working dynamic became more strained. This early fallout did not end their collaboration, but it changed its tone completely, setting the stage for a more complicated relationship in the years that followed. Wayne's on-screen militarization. After World War II, John Wayne began to take his screen image in a very clear direction. He started choosing more military roles and characters connected to war, duty, and national service. This shift was not random. It was part of a steady effort to strengthen how audiences saw him, especially after questions had quietly circulated about why he had not served during the war. One of the most important films in this phase of his career was Sands of Iwo Jima in 1949. In this film, Wayne played a tough U.S. Marine sergeant who trains young soldiers and leads them into battle. The role was serious, disciplined, and strongly connected to real wartime service. The film itself was widely successful and helped reshape Wayne's public image in a powerful way. The performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, and although he did not win the Oscar that year, the recognition itself mattered a great deal. It showed that both audiences and the industry were accepting him in these military roles. More importantly, it helped solidify his reputation as a strong, patriotic figure on screen. After this, Wayne became closely linked with characters that represented American military strength and leadership. As the 1950s began, Wayne also became more active in political discussions, especially those related to anti-communism. This was during the McCarthy era, when fear of communism was widespread in the United States. Wayne openly supported efforts to oppose communist influence in Hollywood and beyond. He took strong public positions and aligned himself with conservative political ideas that matched the national mood of the time for many Americans. He later became involved in broader conservative movements and used his public platform to speak about his beliefs. His image was no longer just about acting in films. It extended into public life, where he was seen as a symbol of traditional American values, military strength, and political firmness. This made him even more recognizable and influential in popular culture. However, not everyone viewed this transformation in the same way. John Ford, who had seen real combat during the war, began to see Wayne's public persona differently. From Ford's perspective, Wayne's strong military image on screen and his political statements were not the same as real military service. Ford saw a clear difference between lived experience in war and acting out military roles in films. This led Ford to view Wayne's growing patriotic image as performance patriotism. In other words, Ford believed Wayne was presenting patriotism through his roles and public statements, but without having experienced the realities of combat himself. This view created emotional distance between them, even as Wayne's fame continued to grow. Despite Ford's opinion, Wayne's popularity did not decline. In fact, his career expanded even further during this period. He became one of Hollywood's most bankable stars and a defining figure in westerns and war films. His on-screen identity was now firmly tied to military strength, discipline, and national pride. But behind the success, a quiet disagreement remained between how Wayne saw his own image and how Ford interpreted it, and that gap would continue to shape their interactions in the years ahead. And as their professional paths crossed again, that tension would become even harder to ignore. John Ford speaks out. As the years went on, John Ford became more open, both directly and indirectly, in his criticism of John Wayne. What started as private disappointment slowly turned into blunt remarks that people around them began to notice. Ford was never known for soft language, and when it came to Wayne's military avoidance, he did not hold back his opinion. In conversations on set and in smaller gatherings, Ford would sometimes refer to Wayne's lack of wartime service in a critical way. He made it clear that he respected real soldiers more than screen heroes, and Wayne often ended up caught in that comparison. While Ford did not always bring it up in formal interviews, people who worked with him knew this view was always present in his thinking. It influenced how he spoke, how he directed, and how he treated certain actors. There were also behind-the-scenes accounts from crew members and collaborators who said Ford occasionally made pointed comments about Wayne's war record, or lack thereof. These comments were not always long speeches, but short, sharp remarks that carried weight in the room. In some cases, Ford would question Wayne's understanding of military roles or challenge his approach to scenes involving soldiers and leadership. For Wayne, these moments were difficult because they went beyond acting criticism and touched his personal reputation. Ford's directing style was already strict and demanding, but with Wayne, it sometimes took on a more personal edge. He could be harsh during filming, and at times, he would use public correction as a way to push actors into the performance he wanted. With Wayne, these moments were sometimes seen by others as a form of humiliation. Whether intentional or not, Ford's comments in front of cast and crew often highlighted disagreements or frustrations in a very visible way. Over time, crew members began to notice that Ford's attitude toward Wayne carried a deeper layer of bitterness. It was not just about performance on screen, it was also about Ford's personal experience during the war and his belief that real military service could not be replaced by film roles. This belief made it harder for him to separate Wayne the actor from Wayne the man. Even though they continued to work together on major films, Ford never fully reconciled emotionally with Wayne. There was no clear moment of forgiveness or reset between them. Instead, their collaboration continued because it was professionally useful, not because the personal tension had been resolved. Ford still respected Wayne's ability as an actor and his importance in Hollywood, but that respect was always mixed with disappointment. Wayne, for his part, rarely responded directly to Ford's criticism. He continued to focus on his work and maintained his public image as a strong, patriotic figure. However, the tension between them remained in the background of their working relationship, shaping how they interacted on set and how scenes were directed. By this point, their connection had become complicated in a very quiet way. They still made films together, but the trust and ease that once defined their partnership had clearly changed, and as their final collaborations approached, that unresolved distance would become even more visible. Final years. In the final years of John Ford and John Wayne's relationship, the distance between them became more clear, even if it was never openly discussed in a direct way. They still crossed paths professionally, but the warmth and ease that had once defined their earlier collaborations were gone. Their later interactions felt more controlled, more careful, and less personal. When they worked together on films in this period, the energy on set was noticeably different from their earlier projects like Stagecoach or Fort Apache. There was still professionalism, but the sense of creative excitement and trust had faded. Conversations were shorter, directions were more formal, and there was less of the open exchange that once helped shape their best work. At the same time, their personal circumstances were also changing. John Ford's health began to decline as he grew older. He faced physical limitations and periods of illness that affected his ability to work at the same pace as before. This naturally reduced his presence and influence on set. While he still had respect in the industry, he was no longer as active or dominant as he had been during his peak years. John Wayne, on the other hand, was still very active and remained one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood. His career was strong, and his influence in the industry continued to grow. He was now a major star who could lead large productions and shape projects around his image. This shift made him more independent and less dependent on directors, including Ford. Despite these changes, there was no clear moment of reconciliation between the two men. Ford never publicly softened his long-standing criticism of Wayne's lack of military service during World War II. Even in later years, he did not fully change his opinion or express a formal sense of closure regarding that issue. His earlier feelings of disappointment and frustration remained part of how he viewed Wayne. John Wayne, for his part, also did not publicly address Ford's personal resentment in detail. He rarely commented on Ford's criticisms or their strained relationship. Instead, he continued to speak about Ford mainly in professional terms, focusing on their films and shared history rather than their personal disagreements. This silence helped maintain a public image of professionalism, even if the private tension remained unresolved. In the end, their relationship did not reach a moment of closure. Instead, it simply settled into distance. They remained connected through their shared history in film, but emotionally and personally, they had moved apart. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's untold stories.